Good morning to everyone. Let's move north a little bit. So do we still have any breeding rollers in Latvia? And this is the area I'm talking about. As far as we know, Russia apart, we are now the holders of the northern limit of range of the species in Europe, since Estonians don't have rollers for about 6-7 years now as a breeding species. We still do. So putting evidence together, we know that we had them all over the country. We had thousands of pairs until mid-20th century. And now we are, it's like copy-paste. My presentation is very similar to Jaroslav's, and Lithuanian one will mirror mine, and so on. So now we are only left with a relict or remnant population in the middle part, which is easier for us because it's just outside the capital, and field work costs less, so we can, EDMUNDS and me, we can do it on a voluntary basis, which we do. And this is the whole population. We are monitoring it since 1999, and that's the development of a number of known nests. Of course, we may miss some here and there, but basically that's the population we have, and these three different colors only show different subsites. Basically, this is the, if you just have the top number, the combined number, that's the area east of Riga, and you can split it in three subsites. As you can see, last year we had lowest number for almost a decade. Up until 2011, we had rather nice increase, so it gave us optimism and the motivation to move on, and we did everything we could. We put boxes, we protected them, and so forth. But then, despite all the effort, and the effort didn't decrease, it was the population number which did, it has been slightly falling back, which is a sad thing, but the context could explain why. That's the level. Yes, so we still do have them as breeding and migratory species. The population size, as you could see, is roughly 20 pairs. And it's, I put it almost stable because indeed, if you compare with these last 15 years, it hasn't been a dramatic crash. It's been up and slightly down, but taking into account this small population, it's just almost stable. And as I showed, there's a probable new decline. So the main threats, again, copy and paste. It's all been said and discussed. So basically, during the last century, it's industrial use of landscape with reduction of available nest sites and food availability, and especially in places where this plays together, or it's enough with just one factor missing, and they can't breed there anymore. So recently and locally, this is worsened by nest predation, which happens irregularly, but when it does, and if you are not ready for that, it could wipe out your small local population, or at least have a dent in it for several years to come. Reduced food supply, we haven't proved it, we haven't scientifically studied it in detail, but I have a hypothesis that if you split the food supply into two parts, early season, late season, then the late season is quite fine. If the chicks have hatched, it's usually enough grasshoppers and similar large insects which develop later in the season. But the early species, like large beetles, if they are missing early in the season, then that could be a limiting factor. And then the bad weather came. Before, a few years ago, we only heard from other countries that cold spells and rainy weather during the chick hatching and early brooding may be a bad thing, but then 3 years ago we had the first episode when we lost more than half of all chicks. They just died when they are just recently hatched, naked, and so either the adults go out for food for a long time, and chicks just not just starve, but they actually freeze. They can't sustain the temperatures and so on. So the weather locally and occasionally with small population, the smaller it gets, the more important accidental or stochastic factors could be traffic mortality, especially if it's adult birds. So, but yes, as I said, it's the small and isolated population in itself which makes it more susceptible, more vulnerable to all these, to any of these, and especially the combinations. And we know less about this part outside of our study area, but probably it's as important or even more important what happens during the rest of the year outside the breeding season, especially during migration. And we know that there is, all of us know that there is a significant persecution, killing of them, especially on the return flight. Eastern route, which crosses Arabian Peninsula, they suffer losses there. We don't know enough about that, but that's a fact. So, roughly speaking, about half of our breeding pairs are inside protected areas. It doesn't automatically guarantee strict or good protection for them enough, but the other part is out, and that's even more difficult to influence. Of course, the goal is very simple, just to keep the population as long as we can. It's not. I'm not even speaking about increase anymore. Just make sure they don't go extinct in front of us. So okay. So as I said, we've been doing this local population studies and monitoring since 1999. We've been putting up boxes. We've been taking measures to safeguard them against predation, and the main animal to take advantage of the boxes is pine marten. And when we had the first martens and killed adults and eaten eggs in boxes, we started putting defense measures like plastic bands, sheets of plastic beneath the box, in this case above the box, because the next tree is very close by. And it seemed to work. That helped for the moment. And we've been, of course, we've been checking the nests, following the fate of the nests, and gives some measures of breeding success and productivity. We've been ringing the chicks with coloring since 2004, and this scheme has been ongoing non-stop. All chicks are ringed with individual codes, and then we are reading the rings when the adults come back and they breed. And with Tom's support and with participation of some of you, we've been involved in this geolocator study a few years ago. And the recent activity, which is EVA's project, live project, Birds in MāRDEGA. It's a military training area in the center of Latvia, which is also a Natura 2000 site. They've been restoring and maintaining feeding habitats, open heathland, dry sandy heath, cutting trees, removing bushes. I'll show some pictures. Putting up nest boxes there, because there's an large open area, but too few trees and no nest holes, no natural nest holes. So the boxes were there. And the area looks like this. It's quite an open area, used by military for training. even when there are some trees, they are too young to be useful for hole nesters. Thanks. And so the special poles with nest boxes have been set up, and with poles it's easier to protect them. Since this trunk doesn't grow, you can put fixed, it's a metal sheet wrapped around. And as everywhere where there are enough rollers and there are boxes, of course they take these boxes and use them for breeding. And this is in RAČINSKIS. And of course then follows next is the same routine. We check nests, we ring chicks, and then we follow the fate of nests until they fledge. So the methods of habitat management in this area are different, not just cutting, but also using controlled burning for the open habitats. But that's just, roughly speaking, a quarter to a fifth of the local population which receives this treatment with good funding, with support from the Ministry of Defense and European funds. Okay, just very quick. We know for sure that we have a small and increasingly isolated breeding population. The nearest one in Lithuania is about 200 kilometers. The next one is about 310 kilometers, and they are even smaller. And we know from ringing that all of our birds are local birds. Like 95–99% of the birds have our own rings. There's no turnover. There are no recoveries of foreign ringed birds, or even birds without rings are very rare. So it's a point of concern there. And on top of that, on top of this small and isolated population, you have these nest predation episodes and weather impacts, which are impossible to predict. Actually, they may. It's like a lottery. They may happen accidentally, and they are more important. Both of them, more important than we previously thought. So we were quite relaxed about it until we had it, and then it was too bad. And I suspect that there's increased additional mortality outside the breeding season. So the return of adult birds to breeding sites, even where the habitats are good and nest box supply is just more than sufficient. It's not enough birds coming back to take advantage of that. So, thank you. And I didn't include the review of the plan because I wouldn't finish on time with this. So, any questions, please?